When I first met Daniel in college, he was charming in that easy, confident way that draws people in without effort. He was the guy who could make friends with anyone, the one professors liked even when he skipped class, the one who somehow managed to talk his way out of trouble every time. I was the opposite, the planner, the overachiever, the one who remembered deadlines and carried color-coded binders. Somehow we fit together. He made me laugh, and I made him stable. That's what I used to tell myself when I overlooked the little red flags, the selfishness disguised as confidence, the way he let me handle all the boring, invisible parts of life. Bills, appointments, cleaning. Those things were my domain. He was bad at that stuff, he said, and I thought that was fine because love meant picking up the slack. For years, I convinced myself that was partnership. We married after graduation, and at first, it felt like a continuation of what we'd always been. I was the organizer, he was the fun one. I paid the rent, scheduled his doctor visits, bought groceries, did laundry, remembered birthdays. He brought home takeout sometimes, planned weekend trips, and bought me flowers on anniversaries. It felt balanced in a way, even if deep down I knew I carried the weight of our lives. When I got pregnant with Lily, I thought maybe things would change. Daniel was thrilled at the idea of being a dad. He told everyone he couldn't wait to hold his little girl, to teach her to ride a bike, to take her to soccer practice. I let myself believe that fatherhood would bring out the responsible side of him. Lily was born on a rainy night after 18 hours of labor that ended in an emergency C-section. I remember lying in that sterile hospital room, my body stitched and broken, while Daniel held her for the first time. He looked at her with awe, whispered that she was perfect, and kissed my forehead, promising me we'd figure it all out together. For one brief moment, I believed him. But the reality of life with a newborn shattered that illusion almost immediately. The first night home, Lily cried endlessly, as newborns do, and I, stitched and sore, tried to soothe her while Daniel snored beside me. I nudged him awake, begging him to hold her just for a while so I could rest, but he groaned, rolled over, and muttered, "I have work in the morning. This is your job." I told myself he was tired, that he didn't understand yet, that he'd get better. But it became a pattern. Every night, every early morning, every time Lily's tiny cries pierced the silence, it was me, always me, stumbling out of bed while Daniel buried his head under a pillow. One night, when Lily was 3 weeks old and I hadn't slept more than an hour at a time, I sat rocking her in the nursery, tears streaming down my face. My body ached. My incision throbbed, and I whispered to Daniel, who was standing in the doorway, asking him just to take her for 10 minutes so I could lie down. He leaned against the frame, arms crossed, and said words that gutted me. "This is women's work. You wanted a baby, so you deal with it." Then he walked away. I looked down at my daughter, her little face scrunched in distress, and something inside me broke. In that moment, I realized I was raising 2 children, one in diapers and one who wore a wedding ring. From that night on, something shifted in me. I still cared for Lily with every ounce of love I had, but the part of me that had always cared for Daniel, that had managed his life, protected him from consequences, and kept his world running, that part shut down. Quietly, without announcement, I stopped. The first change was small. I didn't set his alarm for work. Every morning for years, I had double-checked his phone, made sure it was charged, made sure the alarm was set, because Daniel was notorious for oversleeping. That next morning, I let him sleep. He woke up 2 hours late, panicking, cursing, throwing on clothes, demanding to know why I hadn't woken him. I just looked at him, bleary-eyed from being up all night with Lily, and said, "Getting to work. On time isn't my responsibility." He stared at me like I'd spoken another language. Next, I stopped making his breakfast and packing his lunch. For years, I'd gotten up early to cook eggs, toast, smoothies, whatever he wanted, and packed neat containers for his workday. I had done it even during pregnancy, waddling around the kitchen at 7 a.m. But now, I fed Lily, ate a granola bar, myself, and left Daniel to fend for himself. He grabbed fast food for a week straight, then complained about gaining weight, his stomach hurting from grease. I looked at him, bouncing our daughter on my hip, and said evenly, "Your health isn't my responsibility." Laundry piled up next. His dirty clothes filled the hamper, then overflowed into the corner of the bedroom. He asked me why I hadn't washed anything, and I said simply, "Because they're not my clothes." He wore the same stained shirt, to work 3 days in a row until his coworkers commented on the smell. Bills went unpaid because I no longer tracked them. The fridge emptied of his favorite snacks and protein shakes because I only bought groceries for myself and Lily. His work reports, once polished by my late-night proofreading, became sloppy and filled with errors. His boss started calling him in for meetings, questioning his performance. He missed his dentist appointment, got a ticket for expired tags, and screamed at me about why I hadn't reminded him. I just repeated the same phrase I'd been holding on to. Your life isn't my responsibility. He grew angrier, more confused. His friends noticed too. I used to plan their dinner parties, send birthday reminders, make sure Daniel looked good. Now I did nothing. Invitations dried up, his social life crumbled. And one night his best friend pulled me aside at a bar and whispered, "Why are you being so cold to him?" I almost laughed in his face. Cold? I had spent 3 years being warm enough for both of us, carrying every burden. Now, I was simply done. The house became a reflection of him. His gaming area turned into a nest of empty cans and pizza boxes, sticky and swarming with ants. The bathroom he used was disgusting because I refused to clean it. Meanwhile, Lily's nursery and my little corner of the apartment were spotless, cozy, ours. The contrast was undeniable. His chaos versus my care. The breaking point came 3 months after Lily's birth. Daniel had promised his boss and his boss's wife dinner at our place, something he completely forgot to tell me. That evening, while he was passed out from drinking, the doorbell rang. I peeked through the peephole and saw his boss in a tailored suit, his wife in a nice dress holding a bottle of wine. They knocked again, louder this time. Daniel was drooling on the couch, surrounded by filth. I looked around at the disaster of his half of the apartment and realized this was my exit. My bags were already half packed from the quiet planning I'd been doing. I slipped out the back with Lily in her car seat and everything that was mine. As I pulled away from the parking lot, I could hear voices shouting from upstairs. Daniel's. Boss yelling his name, his wife exclaiming about the smell, the mess, the shock of finding him in that state. Karma had arrived right on time. I moved in with my sister that night. For the first time in months, I felt relief instead of despair. It wasn't easy. Being a single mom never is. But it was better. The silence of peace was worth more than the noise of his neglect. I started working again, building a life for Lily and myself. Months later, I heard through mutual friends that Daniel had been fired. His boss never forgave the humiliation of that night. He lost the apartment, moved, back in with his parents, and complained to anyone who would listen that I had sabotaged him. He even called me dozens of times, begging, accusing, crying. I ignored everyone. Because he was right about one thing. None of it was my responsibility. Lily grew. She smiled, laughed, learned to crawl, then walk, always with me cheering her on. One day, at the park, I met someone new. His name was James, a single dad with a little boy. From the beginning, he was different. He didn't just talk about being a father, he lived it. He packed lunches, remembered doctor's appointments, kneeled in the grass to tie shoelaces. When he came into my life, he didn't try to take over mine, but he offered to share the weight. The first night he stayed over, Lily woke crying at 2 a.m. I braced myself for disappointment, but James was already out of bed, gently picking her up and whispering lullabies. I watched from the doorway with tears in my eyes. This was what fatherhood looked like. This was partnership. Years later, I sometimes still think about that night when Daniel told me holding our baby was women's work. The words didn't come with a shout or a slap. They came casually, almost lazily, tossed over his shoulder as if he were making a harmless observation. That casual cruelty cut deeper than if he had screamed at me. It told me all I needed to know about the man I had built my life with. He didn't see me as his partner. He saw me as his caretaker. That night, I sat in the nursery with Lily in my arms, rocking her back and forth in the dim yellow glow of the nightlight. The soft hum of the lullaby machine filled the silence, but I could still hear Daniel's voice echoing in my head. Women's work. As if being up at 2 a.m. with a newborn wasn't both of our responsibility. As if her life, our daughter's fragile, new little life, wasn't just as much his as mine. I remember staring at Lily's tiny face, her mouth twitching as she dreamed, and crying so quietly that my shoulders shook, but no sound came out. I didn't want to wake her. I didn't want her first experience of the world to be her mother's pain. In that moment, I felt broken. I felt unseen, unloved, and unbearably alone. I thought it might be the end of me, that I had chosen wrong, that I had tied myself to a life where I would always carry the weight while Daniel coasted, always needing to be reminded, always acting as though the most basic acts of love were chores beneath him. But now, with the perspective of years, I realized something else. That moment wasn't the end. It was the beginning. It was the crack in the foundation that revealed the whole structure was rotten. It was the spark that lit a fire in me, a fire that would eventually burn through every excuse I'd made for him, every illusion I'd clung to. I didn't know it then, but that night in the nursery was the night I began to build a new life. Not for Daniel, not even just for Lily, but for myself. Of course, it didn't happen all at once. People like to imagine strength arrives in one dramatic moment, but really, it comes in fragments. At first, I tried to swallow his words, to convince myself he was tired, stressed, that maybe he didn't mean it the way it sounded. But those words lived inside me, and over time, they changed how I looked at him. When he sat on the couch scrolling, his phone while I cooked dinner with Lily strapped to my chest, I thought about women's work. When he slept through her crying and muttered irritably when I shook him awake, I thought about women's work. When I begged him to come to Lily's first doctor's appointment and he said he had more important things at work, I thought about women's work. Every time I thought about it, the truth sharpened inside me. I was already doing this alone. Daniel was physically there, yes, but emotionally, mentally, practically, he wasn't. And if I was already doing it alone, maybe, just maybe, I could actually do it alone. That terrifying idea planted itself in my chest and grew roots. Leaving wasn't as simple as packing a bag and walking out. There were finances, family, the judgment of friends who thought divorce was failure. There was Lily's crib, the car, seat, the endless supplies you need for a baby. And there was fear. Fear of being truly alone, fear of making her life harder. But every time I looked at Lily, I thought about the message I'd be teaching her if I stayed. That women are meant to serve, that being dismissed is normal, that love means swallowing pain and carrying it silently. And that was unacceptable. So, one night, after another fight where Daniel accused me of being too sensitive for crying when he forgot Lily's pediatrician appointment, I quietly began packing. Not everything, just the things that mattered. The essentials for Lily, some clothes, the savings I had hidden away. I strapped her into her car seat, whispered to her that we were going to be okay, and drove away from the life I thought I wanted. The years that followed were the hardest of my life. I won't sugarcoat it. I worked double shifts, sometimes 3, just to keep food on the table. I remember nights when the fridge held nothing but half a carton of milk, and I pretended I wasn't hungry so Lily could eat the last of the cereal. I remember falling asleep on the couch with her bottles still drying on the rack, my body aching from exhaustion. I remember crying in the bathroom with the shower running so she wouldn't hear me, but I also remember her first laugh, loud and unexpected, when I made a silly face during bath time. I remember the way she clapped her hands when she took her first steps, falling straight into my arms. I remember the way she'd crawl into my bed on stormy nights, press her tiny body against mine, and whisper, "Mommy, I feel safe." Those moments stitched me back together. They reminded me why I was fighting so hard. Strength isn't built in big cinematic moments. It's built in those small, everyday choices. To get up when you want to stay down, to keep going when the world feels like it's crushing you. And I kept going. Lily grew. And with her growth came my own. She got older, braver, smarter. She asked questions about everything. Why the sky changes color. Why some people are kind and others aren't. Why some daddies leave. Her questions often stopped me in my tracks. I wanted to answer carefully, truthfully, without bitterness. I told her that love means showing up, that real strength is sharing, that kindness matters more than anything. I told her the things I wished I had known when I was younger. And then, unexpectedly, life surprised me. I met someone new. Not through a dramatic story, not in some whirlwind romance. Just slowly, steadily. He wasn't flashy. He didn't try to sweep me off my feet. He just showed up. Consistently. Patiently. He remembered small details without me reminding him. He washed dishes without calling it helping. He picked up groceries because we needed them, not because I begged. He played with Lily on the floor, building block towers and pretending to be a dragon, without once calling it babysitting. He never made me feel like my exhaustion was weakness. With him, love didn't feel heavy. It felt like wings. I'll never forget the first time Lily got sick when he was around. She had a fever and wouldn't stop crying unless she was held. I expected him to hand her back after 5 minutes, like Daniel always had, but he didn't. He walked her around the living room for hours, humming nonsense songs, cooling her forehead with a damp cloth, rocking her until she finally fell asleep against his chest. When I thanked him, he looked almost confused. "Why? Are you thanking me? She's our girl." Those words cracked me open. Daniel would have said, "She's your girl." But this man said ours. Not by blood, not by obligation, but by choice. And that was when I knew. Love didn't have to mean losing yourself. Years later, I sometimes still think about Daniel. not with anger, not with sadness, with nothing. Indifference. He's a ghost from another life, a reminder of a lesson I had to learn. And in a strange way, I'm grateful to him. Because without Daniel, I might never have realized my own strength. Without Daniel, I might never have understood what real love looks like. Real love doesn't look like one person carrying everything while the other shrugs. Real love looks like two people standing shoulder to shoulder, each holding half, each willing to step forward when the other is tired. Real love says, "Rest. I've got this," and means it. Sometimes people ask if I regret it, if I regret the struggle, the nights alone, the fear. My answer is always no, because those years built me. They taught me to rely on myself, to fight for myself, to demand more. And if I had stayed, if I had continued to shrink myself to fit Daniel's narrow view of womanhood, I would have lost so much more than him. I would have lost myself. I would have lost the chance to raise Lily in a home where love is visible, where respect is the foundation. The truth is, Daniel's cruelty was a gift disguised as heartbreak. His dismissal became my awakening, and the life I have now, the laughter in my kitchen, the peace in my heart, the strength in my bones, was born from that night when he told me holding our baby was women's work. When I look at Lily today, confident and curious, and when I look at the man who chose us both and never once made me feel like a burden, I know without a doubt, that night wasn't the end of me. It was the beginning. And beginnings, even painful ones, are worth everything.